Hi, everyone. Thank you, Enhancing Skills for Life, for allowing us to share this video with you. Thank you, Sean, for getting me in touch with Katy Grainger with the Sepsis Alliance so that we could collaborate to do this video together. So with that being said, I would like to introduce Ms. Katy Grainger, who is on the board of the Sepsis Alliance. She is also a sepsis survivor. She is also an amputee. So she is here with me, and we're going to share our story. We're going to talk about the signs and the symptoms, and we're also going to go into post-sepsis syndrome and what we live with on a daily life after we have survived sepsis. So without further ado, she is now my friend. I would like to introduce Ms. Katy Grainger, and Katy, you can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Kim. As she said, my name is Katy Grainger, and I'm on the board of directors of Sepsis Alliance. And my sepsis and amputee story began about 2.5 years ago. So that's the length of time that I've been an amputee and a sepsis survivor. So it's fairly new to me. First of all, I do want to quickly acknowledge that my neighbors are building a house next door, so you might hear a little hammering. I apologize for that, but I think we can ignore that. Anyways, I want to start by, first of all, describing what is sepsis. And don't be alarmed if it's something where you're thinking, I've heard of that, or I've heard maybe sometimes old people get it in the hospital, or it's some infection thing, but that's about all I know. That's all a lot of people know. And that is a problem because sepsis is something that will impact 1 in 3 people globally. So it's something that you can expect that by the end of your life, you will have heard a lot of stories about people getting an infection and either getting sepsis, getting severe sepsis, going into septic shock. And this will be something that's more common down the road for all of us. We're going to find more and more people who are impacted by it. So sepsis is the body's overwhelming response to an infection. So it always takes place in the midst of an infection. And overwhelming refers to the fact that basically your immune system goes haywire and causes it to overreact, and it causes a massive inflammatory response throughout your body. And if you've been reading about COVID and other infections that take place, really all illness is about inflammation in our bodies. Our bodies are not meant to be inflamed, and it causes problems. So you want to look for the signs of sepsis, and they can be difficult to determine as far as they can oftentimes look like the flu, or it can look just like a bad infection. So I want to give you a few signs to look for. With Sepsis Alliance, we use the acronym TIME, T-I-M-E, are the 3 words that you're remembering. T is for temperature, I is for infection, M is for mental decline, and E is for extremely ill. Now, those are all a little bit general, so I want to go just quickly give you a couple details. First of all, with temperature, which is the first symptom, your temperature can be high or low. Most often it will be high, but in my case, I had no fever. So I actually, when I took my temperature and it registered a little bit low, in my head, I just thought, oh, didn't leave it in long enough, but clearly I don't have a fever. I must be fine. And that was a mistake. I was not fine. And so I want to change one of the conceptions that people have, which is that if you're sick, you're going to have a fever. That's not always the case. And sepsis is one of those exceptions on occasion, but you could also have a high fever. It always takes place in the midst of I, which is infection. And so you'll always have an infection somewhere in your body, but to make that a little bit difficult also, you don't always know when you have an infection. It might be a very mild bladder infection or mild strep throat or mild pneumonia, or you could have a polyp on an intestine, just something that you don't even know is there. So anytime you're sick, consider the possibility that you could also have an infection going on. So keep sepsis in the back of your mind. Now that you've heard this, I hope you will never let sepsis leave the back of your mind for you or anyone that you hear is sick. M is for mental decline. That's a big indicator because when your body starts getting inflamed, you might have a little bit of difficulty breathing. You might have other things going on that you're not really aware of, but other people would probably notice that you're starting to not make sense, or you seem a little bit drunk, or you're extremely sleepy and hard to wake up. Things like that are a sign that your brain is swelling along with the other parts of your body, but that one sometimes pops out to people. So we like to call attention to M for mental decline. Then the final symptom is E. If you ever feel so sick that you're saying something like, I have never been so sick, I feel like I'm going to die, or anyone ever says anything like that to you, people tend to minimize their symptoms. So if someone ever says something like that, get them in the car and get them to the hospital or call an ambulance immediately. It's just really important to be sure. I mean, Kim and I are living examples of why you would rather err on the side of taking an unnecessary ambulance and even paying for an unnecessary ambulance, because we paid with limbs. And for me, it was fingertips and both of my lower legs. And Kim will show you that she lost parts of all 4 of her limbs. And it's something that we don't want to happen to anyone. And just because you may be an upper extremity amputee now or know someone that is, it doesn't mean that you're immune to sepsis. It's not like that's the only dues you'll ever pay. You still have a chance of getting this. So you want to still protect your body that you have and everyone else's that you know. So those are important things. The other thing I like to add is that sepsis can be caused, the infection can be caused by a bacteria, which is the most common. And I hinted at a misconception earlier, is that it always happens in the hospital. It's something that you get like some weird staph infection from the hospital. It doesn't usually happen in the hospital. It sometimes does, but not always. And in fact, more frequently happens outside of the hospital, like it did with me and Kim. So you want to be careful about making that assumption that you have to be in the hospital to get this. What else was I thinking? With the
With COVID?
hospital acquired, thank you, with COVID, thank you. So with COVID, I was mentioning it could be a bacteria. It could also be a virus. COVID, as we all know, is a virus, and it is the most common virus right now causing sepsis. And you have heard of long COVID and the people who are having severe difficulties and end up intubated on breathing machines. That is someone who has sepsis, most likely. They have gotten so severe that their body has gone into septic shock. They're no longer breathing well. They have the damage that you know about in their lungs, but they also oftentimes have multiple organs beginning to shut down and other difficulties. So they've been put on ventilators. And then let's see the other 2 things. So bacteria, virus, a parasite, or a fungus can also cause it. So basically any infection can cause sepsis. So I'll stop on that for now, but food for thought, and please always keep it in the back of your mind. Kim, do you want to go ahead and tell your story, and then we'll bounce back to me and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I became a quadruple amputee in 2016. I am a sepsis survivor. Mine was due to me taking a new medication, and when I could have probably caught it sooner and went sooner. I mean, I declined so rapidly that I don't know, the time that I had to get to the hospital was very minimal because I had already went into anaphylactic shock. Once I got to the hospital, I coded 3 times, and on the 3rd time that I coded, they ventilated me and put me into an induced coma. By nightfall, I was in septic shock. My liver and kidneys started shutting down. They had to use vasopressors to keep me alive. And they told my family that I would have a less than 9% chance of surviving, but I did.
Can you mention, because you mentioned the word vasopressors, can you mention what that is? You and I both know, but
what it does is increases your blood pressure, because your blood pressure is so low, and it increases your blood flow. But after I was given those, and before when I went into septic shock, my family told me that they noticed that my hands and my legs were starting to turn black. And when I came out of my coma, I survived. And when I came out of my coma, I looked at black hands and black legs that were almost up to my knees. And it was devastating. And now I lost my hands, as you see at the wrist, and I'm a below the knee amputee on both of my legs.
And you were fortunate because they were able to save more of your legs than you expected, weren't they? It sounds like it was all the way up to your knee. And if for any people who are below knee amputees or lower leg amputees, if you don't have that extra limb to hook onto, it's really hard to wear prosthetics, but you walk great with prosthetics.
I do.
So it sounds like they were able to save more.
They did. I was very fortunate that they were able to save more of my legs to make it easier for me to live my life. And I'm pretty much, as far as I know, I'm the only quad that lives by herself. I mean, there may be more out there that I'm not aware of, but I do live independently, and I'm very proud to say that I am.
That's amazing. You're doing great. Do you want me to give a quick rundown of my story at this point?
Yes, please do.
My story is similar. I had flu-like symptoms, and it was caused by a tiny infection on my thumb. And I had been traveling. I got off an airplane. I looked down. I had this little purple bump that was oozing. And that's one of the signs of infection is if a sore is oozing anything like really super obvious, it was just kind of discolored. It was a little bit purpler than normal, and it had just clear fluid coming out. But I looked at it and I was concerned that it could be a staph infection because it looked different than anything else I'd ever had. So I did something that a lot of people do. I had visited a walk-in clinic or an emergency clinic or just something that was less than a hospital, or some people go to their doctor. And at that time, I did not have a septic reaction yet. I just had an infection. So they gave me antibiotic ointment, and they told me to take antibiotics in case it was staph, because they weren't able to tell immediately. And they sent me on my way. So over the weekend, that happened on a Friday. Over the weekend, I happened to be alone. My husband was on a fishing trip. And I, over the weekend, exhibited a lot of the symptoms that Kim did. I threw up at one point, and when I did that, I thought it was only because I hadn't been eating and I took an antibiotic. But probably it was because my body was becoming very septic, and I was starting to get those flu-like symptoms that would be natural. I don't know about any of the other symptoms because I really don't have memories of that weekend. But I do know that on Sunday morning, I called a friend, or I texted a friend, and I said, can you please take me to the hospital? I have never been so sick. And she texted me back right away and said, can we go to the emergency clinic? And I responded immediately and said, no, we have to go to the hospital. So she just thought, okay, this isn't good. So she rushed down to my house. And when she got there, she found me fairly unresponsive. I was difficult to wake up. I was in my bed. I didn't answer the door. She had to get into the house on her own. And she immediately realized that I was having real problems, and she took me to the hospital. So in my case, the hospital was an hour away. I was on the island of Kauai, which is one of the Hawaiian islands. And we just had a small regional hospital that serviced the whole island. So I went there. And when I got there, my blood pressure was 50/30, which means that I was in full septic shock. So they didn't know it was sepsis yet, but they knew I was in shock, and they had to try and increase my blood pressure. So like with Kim, they gave me fluids, they gave me antibiotics. Before that, they withdrew blood so that they could test my blood. But unfortunately, it never did show what the pathogen was that caused my illness. And that's not uncommon. You might hear people say that they got sick, they were told they had sepsis, but they don't know what caused it. And that is not uncommon. So a lot of people think I must have done something really obvious, like, had some big gash on my body and it was oozing pus. That is not the case. It can be something very small. So it's just that your immune system reacts overly. It reacts too much, and it has a bad reaction. So, and it can happen to anybody at any time with any size cut. Common things are spider bites, mosquito bites that get scratched. Kids get it. And then, like I said, strep throat, bladder infections. And sometimes you don't even know you have those. So in my case, I spent the day at the hospital, and like Kim, my extremities were starting to turn purple. My kidneys started to fail. My kidneys actually did fail. So they had to transfer me over to Honolulu, where I could undergo dialysis. They didn't have that equipment in the emergency room in the hospital I was in. They did have it available for long-term care, but they didn't have it for what I needed. So they transferred me to Oahu. I took an airplane over, and for that flight, they actually talked to me, and I've read my medical chart. I responded, and they just said, hey, we're going to, you'd be safer if we intubate you. And I just said, okay, not knowing that that was potentially the last time I would be alive, really. And so I was intubated, put into the same coma, same reasons that Kim was, and it's to allow your body to heal for a while. And hopefully you survive that intubation, and not everybody does. You're very well aware of that at this point with all of the deaths because of COVID. So I was in the hospital for 5 days. My husband got home as quickly as he could. He was told to call my children because they didn't think I would live. And they spent 5 days by my bed while they watched my hands and feet turn black. And I was fortunate. They were able to save this much of my hands. So the first hospital I was at on Kauai, I believe they saved my life. The second hospital, I believe they saved my hands. And I underwent treatments there. They had hyperbaric chambers, which not all hospitals have. So I was able to spend 90 minutes every day in a hyperbaric chamber as soon as I was clear enough to do that. And then I also underwent treatments with nitroglycerin cream on my hands and feet that was very painful. But whatever happened, like I say, I have these hands and feet, or my hands, I don't have my feet. But I can really use my hands well. I always show them. I know it's kind of distracting, sorry, but I always show them because I use them very well. I can write, I can drive, I can do a lot of things. Now, Kim is amazing, as I'm sure a lot of you are, even missing hands. It's amazing what people can do, but I didn't have to have that much adaptation there, but I did have to worry about my legs. And I did end up flying to Seattle, which is where we had moved from 10 years ago prior to this happening. And we moved back to that town because of all of the care that I could get and the aftercare I would need, including prosthetics and amputations and all of that. So I was flown again across the ocean, much longer flight, and I went to a hospital there. So we want to move on to post-sepsis. And oftentimes what happens, I think most hospitals at this point, they do have a post-sepsis protocol. They do recognize, obviously, we need to learn to walk. We need to learn to use our new limbs. There are things that are done for our amputations, but they don't always take into account all of the symptoms that are going to stay with us for quite a while. So for me, it's been 2.5 years. For Kim, it's been 5. And we want to go over the symptoms kind of that we had in the beginning and that we still have. And it's important to be aware of these because it's just important to know for people that they're not alone when they're undergoing these things, and that there are things that they can do and treatments available. And if the place that you're initially going doesn't really have a program, you can reach out to resources like this one here. You can reach out to Sepsis Alliance and find resources of locations that might be closer to you. Talk to people who've had sepsis that can recommend places. And again, you can do that with people with Sepsis Alliance. They'll kind of give you ideas of where your market is and maybe hook you up with someone else so that you can find resources. The other thing to know is that if ever you hear people being sick or you get really sick, it's important to know you can call Sean and you can say, hey, who are those ladies who talk? Are they available? My brother's sick. He's in the hospital and we are here all the time. We take calls all the time. And we're happy to go over this, kind of tell you our experience, remind you the things that you want to say to your doctor. We are not doctors. We are just really great patients. We've been through a lot, as most of you have as well. So we have an idea of what that side's like, and we know how we lobbied for ourselves. And although Kim is alone now living by herself, she had a lot of people helping her along the way. And that's a really important part of it. So Kim, why don't you talk a little bit about post-sepsis syndrome and what you're experiencing?
No one told me anything about, what I would be affected with after this all happened to me. Everybody was more focused on my recovery and me, being able to walk again. And so not a lot of that was explained to me until I started experiencing the nightmares, anxiety, depression, PTSD from the nightmares, and my nightmares are so vivid. I have memory issues now. That was something that I recently found out because I knew that something was going on. So I went to a neurologist and he confirmed that I do have memory issues. It's nothing with Alzheimer's, but it is related to what I've been through. There's just, people don't understand when we're at home and at night what we go through and what we relive. I don't recall a lot of what happened during the time that once I got to the hospital and then I was put in an induced coma. My family had to fill in those parts for me, and for them to have to watch me to recover from this was really difficult on them. And me wondering what my life was going to be, I lost my family because of this, and that was another thing that I had to deal with on top of what I was already going through. And it just...
And by that, just to clarify, you had your extended family standing very firmly by your side,
Yes.
But your husband
Yes.
left.
Yes, he did. I guess, when somebody's faced with this, they don't think they're strong enough to be able to handle it. And I was never given a reason, pretty much that he couldn't take care of me and he would put me in a home. And that's when I got the fight when I was in rehab to fight for my life, to be independent. And I worked very hard to do that. But with these symptoms, it can be devastating and put you in a place that you never thought you'd ever go again. I find myself doing that. Not as much as I was, but it still happens. and I try not to stay there, because that's one thing that if you fall into that pit of depression, it's so hard to come out of. I've been there, and I try not to stay there. I focus on the positive and what I want to do. So that helps me a lot to not stay in that depression. But those are the main symptoms, and sweating.
Those are all mental symptoms, which is half of it.
Yeah.
What about the physical? Obviously, we just saw your arm, so we
Yes.
understand that you had amputations and you had to come get through that and learn to live a new life with that.
Yes.
Are there other physical symptoms that you're experiencing? Any pain or
Of course, the phantom pain.
swallowing? Any things that are kind of you wouldn't necessarily think of, or?
Well, I know everyone does, and some people don't. I've heard that some people don't experience phantom pains. I know I do. I experience them. It feels like I'm being electrocuted, or somebody sticking pins, sticking me in the toe that I no longer have. My hands, during the day, I don't think about it, but it's when I go to bed and take my legs off at night that it just goes insane, that it keeps me from sleeping. And when like with the nightmares, when it makes me wake up at night, I have sleep issues, and it's horrible. And I know most of the amputees here that is on this group have made posts about how awful their phantom pains are. I can tell when the weather's changing. It's just so many different things. I sweat so much more now than I used to. I feel so, I have to take my leg off sometimes during the day to dry it off, to keep it from slipping off, because if it slips off, I'm going to fall and I'm going to get hurt really seriously bad. And we don't want that to happen. So I make sure that if I'm out anywhere, I carry a bag with me with everything that I need to dry my legs off, and make sure that everything is, good with those, so that I don't have an accident and fall. But that's the main issues that I have had. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people in this group that experiences the same things.
Some of those, yeah. So I will just mention a lot of the same things that you mentioned. I'm having issue with. A couple of things that I'm just going to fill in a couple of the gaps that I'm thinking of that were things. I think we both lost our hair.
Yes.
Didn't you lose your hair as well? So we both lost our hair. It's like right after I got my. So for me, it was a month later a month from the day I got sick is when we removed my fingertips. And then it was a month after that, because I chose to have a month in between to heal. Oh, no, excuse me, opposite. Month after that, I lost my lower legs. I didn't lose them. They were amputated. And then it was a month later that my fingertips were amputated. And then a month after that, so 2 months after my legs, that I got my first prosthetics. And just as I'm literally getting back on my feet, my hair is falling out in handfuls. And Kim and I have talked about this, and how on top of everything we've been through, how just devastating that was. It was so upsetting. And I mean, I always joke about this, but it's 100% true. First of all, depression also, and I've seen a therapist. PTSD is really common with anyone who's undergone a trauma, which anyone who's lost a limb. So a lot of the people in this group who have amputations have been through some type of trauma and have had at least adapting. And so depression would not be unusual. But I just lost my train of thought. Hopefully we can cut and edit this. So let's see, the amputations. Oh, the hair loss. Okay, that's it. The hair loss, sorry. Mental issues. I also have memory problems. So about the hair loss though, I had gone to like my counselor about 2 or 3 times by the time my hair fell out. And I think we spent 3 or 4 hours talking about what was it going to mean if I had to cut my hair short, and how did it make me feel? And it made me feel like I was really sick. And I mean, just a lot of mental stuff that I had around my hair, which is kind of silly, but it just was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. It was just the thing that sort of pushed me over the edge. It was like I could handle everything else, and then something I wasn't expecting. And honestly, I think if someone had prepared me better, and if it had been mentioned earlier, I would have been more ready for it. But I was so spent, and I just had nothing left in me. And then with my hair falling out and having to cut it super short, it was just devastating. And a couple other things, we were intubated. I have difficulty swallowing. If I throw back water quickly, my throat doesn't close all the way, and I'll choke. I'll start coughing, and then it just causes me to cough for a half hour, and it's just really uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
my voice is a little bit scratchier than it used to be. And in the beginning, actually, when they did my amputation of my lower legs, they also injected my vocal cords because I had to have them looked at a couple times. They were not closing all the way. So they injected them with a filler that enabled them to close, but it's a temporary filler that only lasts a few months. So that's gone now. And I can tell that there's still problems. I also have phantom pains. I had severe ICU delirium, which I think you may have as well. That lasted for me, it was 8 days because the 7th day, my husband finally went to the doctor and said, she's brain damaged. You need to do something. This is not my wife. There's something really wrong with her. Yeah. I was hallucinating day and night, whether I was sleeping or I was awake. So I was having severe nightmares. And even when I was awake, I would talk to my husband about my dreams and think they were real. I had a very active fantasy life, apparently, because I had all these horrible things that were happening, and it took me to the darkest places. I mean, with my children being in accidents and my husband and I getting a divorce, things that were not at all real. We had a very good relationship. My kids were healthy. I thought someone went into our bank accounts and stole all our money. I mean, it was almost like I went to sleep and thought, what are the things that could really, really derail us on top of all this and all of those?
Hold on.
That's okay.
Okay, I must have shut it. Okay, sorry. I must have hit a mistake. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so are we still on? Okay. So anyways, I was envisioning a lot of things that didn't really happen. And it was on day 8 that they had finally agreed that they would do a brain scan. And I finally woke up and started complaining to my husband to quit trying to force feed me. And everybody was bugging me, and there were too many people in my room, and they all looked at each other and said, she's back. Okay, she's better. This is her again. This is not that crazy lady who was having all this stuff go on. So these are some of the things that can kind of happen afterwards. And some of those things can continue. Most people don't have delirium like that. But Kim mentioned having, severe nightmares. And when we go to bed at night, this is for anybody with amputations, we take our limbs off. And that's where we sort of have a moment of truth every night and every morning is like, I am an amputee. And although I can walk on these legs and although my hands work okay, or that you have functioning limbs that can pick up things and do this for you, you sort of can go through the day and you know that you're getting along well, but then you get into bed and you realize, no, I'm really missing these body parts, and it's a big deal. So it's not uncommon for people to have difficulty sleeping and to have nightmares and have depression. So there are resources out there, and that's important to understand. And I don't know if Kim, if you want to share any of the things that you've done, for any of your symptoms, seeing a therapist, taking antidepressants. Are there any things that you want to share? Or, I've mentioned that, and I do take antidepressants, so I will share that for me. But is there anything else you want to share of things that you've done, and then we'll give some resources and places to get information?
I also see a therapist. I'm also on anxiety medication. It's something that I've been on since all of this happened. And I know that I'm part of a lot of support groups. There are support groups out there for sepsis survivors, for their caregivers. I also use the Sepsis Alliance website as well. I educate people as much as I can about what I've been through, so it could possibly prevent anyone else going through this, what we've been through, and also to mainly save lives and limbs. I'll reach out if I'm, to people. If I'm struggling, I have people that I can go to. I go to church. I talk to my pastor. If I'm having problems and I can't get to my therapist, I talk with my family if I feel like something's bothering me, and even talk about, we still talk about what I went through back 5 years ago. It's a reminder of how precious life can be. It also confirms that my family is strong. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today. They fought for me for my level of amputations because they wanted to cut me above the elbow and above the knee. And I was fortunate to have a family there fighting for me and fighting for when I couldn't. I have doctors that I go to on a regular basis for my health care to make sure that everything's okay. I also have Crohn's disease, so I see a gastroenterologist. and I have my my actual primary care and I can reach out to her by message anytime if I'm struggling, because I've talked with her about some of my issues that I've been having as well. But there's so many resources out there that you can go to. Don't feel like you're alone. If you need to, you can reach out to me. I can point you in the direction that you need or try to help you through it. I'm here if you ever need to talk. If you feel like you're just struggling, please know that don't try to do it alone. Reach out to someone to help you through a difficult time, whether it be someone being a caregiver of a sepsis survivor or the sepsis survivor themselves, because caregivers as well go through a lot taking care of us when we have gone through a tragic situation.
That's great. I think that it's important to understand. I know that one of my best resources is right here. It's Kim. I mean, it's people like her. It's when I go to a group, I had done some amputee support groups. And then I kind of realized, and I share my story for sepsis. And so I've always been, and that came to me about a year out. So I kind of, as I was just sort of getting through the recovery, all of a sudden Sepsis Alliance and I connected, and I had this opportunity to speak and to tell people about it. So that's really empowering for the two of us. But I realized that I really didn't know a lot of, first of all, I don't know a ton of amputees that had similar situations as mine. And I didn't know a lot of sepsis survivors because I was sort of out here doing my thing, but I wasn't really connecting as much as I should have. And so as I connect more and knowing more people are out there, it really helps. And so I hope that in us sharing this today, it lets you know that if you've gone through, I mean, first of all, we are also amputees and we are fellow amputees with you, and we feel what you're going through. We haven't been through the same things, but we're here to share stories, and support groups are a really valuable resource that I also have benefited from. And then just being more involved in the sepsis community.
Yes.
And Kim and I also, another thing that we do is we're active with Amputee Coalition and Sepsis Alliance doing stuff in Washington, trying to see if we can change the laws and change the way that they handle things. And both of us are active in doing those types of things. And then what else? Oh, I share my story with elementary kids. I've done that twice so far. And once was in a classroom and once was online. And elementary kids are the best.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And so I encourage anyone out there, all of you amputees, get out there, go to your local schools. They love you. They love your toys. They think it's so cool. They want to see what you use, and they want to see your residual limbs, and they want to ask you, does it hurt? And does blood flow into your prosthetic? And these fabulous questions. It's just, every time I talk to them, it feeds me for a month. I just saw them 3 weeks ago, and I don't know how I'm going to get through summer without kids, because that was one of my favorite things. And I think it really is important that we all spread awareness about what it means to be an amputee, that we are still people. We're still fabulous. We still, we're not any different. A lot of us aren't any different than we were before. And even if we are different than we were before, that's okay too. We're, some of us are approachable, some of us aren't, some of us want to share our stories, some of us don't. That's totally fine. That's normal, because we're people and we're different. So I just encourage you to know that you're not alone. And if you are feeling good about yourself, if you are feeling confident, share that with other people, and reach out to Amputee Coalition, reach out to me and Kim, and reach out to Sepsis Alliance, and reach out to this group and find out if there are ways that you can help. And maybe you can share your story at your church, at your schools, at, within your friends, in your book clubs, just whatever. So that's been a really big thing, I think, for both of us. And just to know that there are resources out there. So I will at this point just mention, I don't really have a lot of social media out there, but I do recommend that everyone please check on sepsis.org, which is Sepsis Alliance's website. They have a lot of materials and it's really well organized. So we didn't share slides today because it was a little bit complicated from home, but we do encourage you to go on that website and to look up resources. You can, if anyone is ever sick, go there immediately and start looking at the signs and symptoms. Remind yourself what they are. Make a phone call to Sean, ask how to reach us. You can reach out us directly. I think I'm K Grainger at sepsis.org is my website. My email. So it's KGRAINGER. And then I do have a video on YouTube if you want to see more of my story. You may not at this point, but it's out there. And if you look up Katy Grainger and then sepsis, you can find a few more things. There's a cool video of me wake surfing last year to raise money for Sepsis Alliance. And my sister-in-law had written this amazing song that I got to use. She's an amazing bluegrass singer, so and songwriter. So that's kind of cool. You might check that out. Anyways, Kim, what about you? Where can we find you and what resources would you recommend?
First of all, I want to thank first, and then I'll give that information out, but I want to thank you. I want to thank you for us becoming friends. Your friendship means the world to me. We talk about a lot of stuff, and I've enjoyed our talks that we have. And I can't wait to have many more of those in the future and hopefully to meet you in person. But I have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But if you Google Kim Gilliam, Gilliam, Steele, Steele, all of my media platforms will pop up. I have a website that shares my story, things that I have done, different groups that I've spoke with. And I want to also say something like what Katy said about talking to elementary school kids. Kids are so resilient. I mean, they think when I go and when they see my prosthetic arm, they think I'm the bionic woman. The way that kids treat me compared to grown adults is totally different because, like I said, kids are kids and they don't judge people. They look at people no different than anybody. But I have found as well that people do tend to treat me differently and look at me differently. And I have accepted that because I am very proud of the woman that I have become. So if you want to look at what I've been through, I've been skydiving, I've been ziplining. It's all out there. The videos are out there. I have a YouTube channel as well. It's connected with this group as well. So there's a lot of life hack videos out there that I have been posting of things, how I get through and live my life on a daily basis. I've got some more exciting things coming up that I'll be sharing with you pretty soon that I'm excited about. And hopefully it will motivate you and inspire you to get out there and do more things. Get out here and help us advocate. I got a letter back from one of the senators here in Georgia confirming that when that bill comes across that he will vote for it. So I was excited to get that email confirmation from one of our senators here in Georgia. So that was a big win for me. And I'm very proud, and I submitted it to the Amputee Coalition to let them know that I did get it, confirmation from Georgia that it will be voted on, because we need these bills to be passed for us to live our lives the way that we should. We shouldn't be able to not live our lives no different than people who have not lost their hands or legs.
That's wonderful. Thank you as well. It has been a pleasure getting to know you. And I do want to mention too that Sepsis Alliance is in the process of starting a post-sepsis community. It'll probably be after the first of the year that we really get that together. But one of the things we're going to do is try and bring survivors and their families together and provide more resources and maybe get some groups going and gather more people to do lobbying and be activists. And that's down the road. And we'll also provide more resources. And that will also include COVID, because as I mentioned, COVID, they're not mentioning it a lot in the news. You can find it, it's out there. And it's very well known that the symptoms are so similar that it doesn't meet all the criteria exactly. So they're not always calling it sepsis, but it's sepsis. I mean, and I think that we're going to see pretty soon that criteria is going to get expanded. And that's only for the people who get really sick. Many of the people don't have that septic reaction, but the people who get really sick, the long COVID people, and they're also having difficulties now. So it's creating an opportunity for us to make this happen and to bring more awareness. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, and I want to say one more thing, and then we can wrap this up. If you're able to, please donate to sepsis.org. No money, no amount is too small. Please try if you can and share it with your friends to donate, if they can, to the sepsis.org, because it gives them more resources where we can get out there and get more information put out there and put more training modules out there to reach more people, that we can start decreasing the numbers that we have of sepsis deaths that are happening and continue to climb every day. But I want to thank Miss Katy Grainger for taking the time to do this video with me. I'm looking forward to doing many more. And I want to thank the Enhancing Skills for Life group for watching. Let us know your comments. Reach out to us if you need us, and know that you always have someone in your corner fighting for you.
Absolutely. And I will just add one last thing, and that is, of course, keep up your donations to Enhancing Skills for Life, because these programs are amazing.
Yes.
And as you all know, maybe not everyone, but you're here today, you're watching this. It's different being a lower extremity and upper extremity amputee. And what Sean's doing is just amazing. And this group is really incredible.
I agree.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you for taking the time to do this with me. And I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely.